And after reading this, I literally had a nightmare that I was being human trafficked to be chopped up and sold on the black market to be eaten. And I woke up and I felt so sick I could not eat breakfast. I just left for class. I've never dreamed about a book before, so I guess I'll give it that. It'll make you feel something, but is it worth it? I don't think so. I really don't think so. So for October, I only read 5 books, but it's okay. It's okay. There are a couple months this year where I think I literally read like 2 books, so I'll take the 5. And I try to do a lot of them to be Halloween, like fall vibe. But I did kind of go out of that scene for one of my books. So the first 3 I have are all classics, and I did them for a special spooky video. I'll link that below in my description, but I'm still gonna talk about them here a little bit. But if you want to learn about them more in detail, you can check that out. So first we have The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, and this is a short story where a man wakes up and he's a bug. So I was really drawn in by the story because it's pretty unique. I've never heard of anything else like that. And it's a great cross between capitalism and humanity. But I do think it could have made attempts to be slightly more realistic, which I know sounds crazy because waking up as a bug is in no way realistic. But in terms of the humanity aspect of it, I would think that if you wake up as a bug, you should be concerned about your bodily autonomy. And Gregory didn't even think about that. Like, he just thought about work, which is really sad. But you know, I still think there'd be some moment where you're like,
oh, my body.
No, he's like,
I gotta go to work.
Which is of course more complex. And I would recommend it if you want a short story to read. But it's probably sitting at like a straight 4 stars for me. And the next one I have is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. I'm gonna be honest, I expected this to be way better than it was. I thought it was kind of boring, to be honest. But if you don't know what this is about, it's a doctor that makes this potion thing and it turns him into an evil character. So he has this good side where he's this doctor and helps people, but he also has this demonic side where he does really bad stuff. And I like that it shows the duality of people and that they can be good and bad and complex human beings. But I just thought in general it's kind of obvious what was gonna happen, but I'm also probably not the age demographic for it. I know some people read this in high school, but I do acknowledge its merit. I think it's probably crucial for its time. It's kind of like the original of demonstrating duality of evil and good in people. I gave it like a 3.75 to 4 stars. And up next, we have like a true classic, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This is definitely way longer than the other ones I read. I think The Metamorphosis is less than 100 pages. And if you don't know what Frankenstein is, it basically follows Frankenstein, who's a college student, and he's working in this lab he made where he's trying to recreate humanity. Like, he wants to make a human being, but instead he makes this really ugly monster. And the monster really does not like Frankenstein, but it's just because the monster knows that Frankenstein doesn't like him. And I honestly think that if Frankenstein was just nicer to his creation, that things would have worked out better for him, because in the end that hatred is what cost him so many things in his life. But Frankenstein is so mean to the monster, and I honestly felt bad for the monster. I did. It's kind of sad. It's definitely my favorite classic I read for that video, and it's actually definitely at the top of my favorite classics that I've ever read, although I haven't read that many, so I don't know how qualified I am to say that. But I did actually really like it. I don't think it's hard to read, which I usually do anticipate with classics. The hardest part though is getting into it because the letters are the most boring part. If you like audiobooks, I recommend going on YouTube and listening to that. They have a few free ones you can pick from. And I initially started with that because the letters were just so boring, I couldn't focus, so I just listened to it, and it helped me a lot. But I kind of just listened and read it physically on and off, depending on what I was doing. And the one that I picked on YouTube had really good dynamics for voicing. Like, you could tell who was narrating the chapter, if it was the monster or the doctor, Frankenstein. It was really well done, considering it is a classic. Very good. And I like that it shows when people create something bad, that they're also bad for creating that. And I gave it like I think I gave it 4, 4.25. I feel like I'm rating 4 a lot, but maybe 4.5. Maybe. Pretty good. And moving away from the spooky, classic-y type of book, I have something totally off the wall that I don't think is fall. I don't know what season it would be. I guess it could be. But you know, I wasn't like looking at this as like an October read. And I was initially gonna read A Little Life first because people compare the two. But I did read Young Mungo by Douglas Stewart. This is a heavy book. Not syntactically, like not in the way it's written. It's very simple to read, but the content of it is very heavy. And if you're someone who usually reads trigger warnings before you read books or watch movies and engage in media, I definitely would recommend checking those out before you dive into this book. But Young Mungo follows a 15-year-old boy who's growing up in Glasgow, and I believe it's the 1980s, and how he navigates his really, just honestly, brutally tragic life. He has an alcoholic mother who's in and out. His brother's in a gang, and I honestly was very terrified. And then he has his sister who's got her own issues going on, but tries to take care of him. And there's just so much character development as Mungo explores his sexuality, and also who he is as a person, or who he wants to be, or even who he thinks he needs to be. It's just devastating. But it's so well written. There's not a single underdeveloped character. Like, everybody has their own thing going for them. Everybody has some descriptive detail. There's not one underdeveloped person in this book. Everybody has their own moment. Everybody makes sense. I feel like sometimes there's just characters that are just kind of there, you know? That's not the case in this book at all. They all develop in one way or another. It's just crazy good writing. I've never seen anything like it. It's definitely my top 5. Probably top 3 for the year. It's that good. I can't imagine rating it anything but 5 stars. I think that if people do rate it under that, it might be because some of the heavy topics in there, but for me, it's just an easy, straight 5. I cannot recommend this enough. But on the other hand, my last book, this one, I cannot not recommend it enough. I remember after I read this, I felt so disgusted that I literally had to get up and go shower. I felt so nasty. I felt very sick. So this is Tender as the Flesh by Agustina Bastarrica, and I don't even know what I should say about this. It might be the worst book I've read this year. Another book I didn't like was Circe. I read that over the summer. This just really tops it in a sense of how much I did not like it. This book is basically about a world where people are permitted to eat other people. So cannibalism. And it's supposed to be for survival purposes, but there's some debate on whether or not the government is like just doing it for population control, or if you actually do need to eat it to live. But I thought it was very underdeveloped. I thought it lacked a lot of character development. I thought it could be way better. It skipped over some things that I actually wanted to read about. It was very nasty. I do get nauseous pretty easily. But like, apart from the whole gory cannibalism thing, the writing itself to me just was not very good. It fell flat for me. I gave it 2 stars. Gonna be honest, I gave it 2 stars. So those are all my books I read for the month, and I will give a little glance at a TBR of what I want to read for this month in November, but I'm gonna warn you, I never follow it. I'm more of a mood reader, and I just kind of start reading what I want to read, but I can at least give you 2 that I'm reading for sure, because by the time I'm filming this, it's like November 6th or 7th, I don't even know. Oh, it's actually November 8th. So, I've already read one book, so you can at least get a peek at that, but no promises on my TBR, It's kind of just like an inspirational board of things I can read if I want to read them. I'll show you. So really the first thing I do is make this big November book list. I do this for every month, but I usually fall very short and read, well, last month I read 5. I have 9 on here. So I did read The Year of Magical Thinking, which is this book by Joan Didion. So you can get excited to hear about that, at least. And I'll show these on my stack. So this is by my bedside table right now. It's Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. This is one of Sofia Coppola's favorite books, and I really want to do a video on her because Priscilla just came out, or it is coming out. I honestly don't know. And I want to watch it. She has great films, so love to do a video on her if I get to it. And then right now I'm also reading 3-Body Problem. This is like try not to DNF challenge, but it's actually so good. It's so much physics, I get overwhelmed and I have to read it slow. I'm gonna be honest, that's the truth, but it's so interesting. And then over here we have Pachinko. I want to read that so bad, so bad. So hopefully I really do actually read that, because I really want to read it. It's the one I think about all the time. And I also really want to read Just Kids by Patti Smith. This might be a month where I read a lot of nonfiction, like memoir type books, and I really hope I actually follow through with that, because I also want to read The Woman in Me by Britney Spears that just came out, and I did get access to the ebook from my local library, so I think I'm gonna do a whole video on that. The Secret History was on that list. Les was on that list. And then I think the last thing on there was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is coming out in theaters, and it's the prequel to the Hunger Games trilogy. I think it's all about President Snow and Lucy Gray, although I don't really know who that is, but people compare it to Katniss. So I'm really interested in that. That'll be like a dive back into my childhood type of thing, because I love the Hunger Games. If you have any recommendations for me to read, let me know. Hopefully I get to my list. Hopefully I get through a couple things on my list.